Welcome, everyone, to another session here. I have with me Michael Salazar from Trust&Will. Trust&Will is an amazing leading digital estate planning platform that has really democratized the estate planning process. If we've had a conversation before, if you've seen any of my content, you know how important estate planning is. And I've always advised all my clients to utilize Trust&Will because they've really taken this really complex conversation and made it super simple, bringing it to your doorstep. You know, as a travel nurse, you don't have the luxury of walking into a brick and mortars law firm with rich oak and mahogany to get your estate planning done. You need to be able to do it wherever you are, whenever you can. And Trust&Will has certainly facilitated that for all of my clients. I'm super excited to have this conversation with Michael. Michael is going to talk about kind of estate planning 101 and how Trust&Will actually implements estate planning. And then we're going to have a Q&A session. So once again, without further ado, Michael Salazar, take it away, Michael. It's really great to talk to you today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Marlon. Yeah, excited to be speaking with you today about Trust&Will. And you said it, Trust&Will is going to be the right solution for your type of client, the busy travel nurse that doesn't have a whole lot of time on their hands, that can't take that time to sit down with an attorney. That's exactly the reason why Trust&Will was founded in the first place. Our founder, Cody Barbo, on the week of his wedding, started to think about all these things like, I'm about to get married. We're going to plan to have a child. We are going to buy a house. I wish there was an easier way to plan for the inevitable rather than having to go spend $5,000 to set up trust with an attorney. He was looking for online solutions, but didn't find anything that really clicked with him and thought, why isn't there this TurboTax-like solution for estate planning? So he got together with a couple friends and they hit the drawing board and they built something. Now Trust&Will exists. We're based in San Diego and we're growing real fast. Our ultimate mission here is to make estate planning more accessible for Americans. I was super surprised when I first found out that around 60% of American families don't have any sort of estate planning documents set up.
That's wild.
And when you include families that have documents that are out of date, that number is much, much higher. So we're trying to lower that number, give families a way to create an estate plan that is, of course, more affordable, but also something that they can do on their own time, something that leads with education so they can really feel confident and informed when making their decisions. They can receive best-in-class member support throughout the process. And so ultimately, it's a more accessible experience. They can have valid, state-specific, comprehensive documents in hand, all on the same day of deciding to get started.
I love it. I love it. I love that the education piece that you talked about, because education has always been like the cornerstone. I've always given away a ton of information to whoever been following me, because I think it's important to kind of have the language around the conversations that you're having with your professional to at least understand what you're going into and to be able to make a decision that's best for you and your family. So I love that introduction about Trust&Will. Tell us more.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you mentioned the education, why it's so important. I think one of the biggest barriers for why families aren't taking this first step and meeting with an attorney is, well, obviously it's intimidating, right? People don't want to think about death or what's going to happen to everything that they worked so hard for after they die, right? They don't want to take that first step. So it's an intimidation factor. It's sitting down with an attorney that you don't know and going over personal details. It's cost. But then it's also a lack of education. People don't take that first step because they don't understand what an estate plan really is, what's included in the plan, and what these types of documents can do, not only after your life, but during your life as well. If you ever go missing, if you're ever incapacitated, assigning someone to actually make decisions for you is something that is incredibly important. And I think something that not a lot of the American public actually realizes is included in an estate plan.
Yeah.
So those are some details that we can go over. I know we're going to do this kind of Q&A format, which I'm really excited about. So is there a specific topic you wanted to kick it off with?
You know what? I actually, this just actually came to mind because a lot of my clients, their first introduction to end of life planning is life insurance, right? And a lot of people may feel very secure in the fact that they've got a life insurance policy, but don't understand that life insurance is only like a part of estate planning, and how in and of itself it's not an efficient tool to make sure that your affairs are taken care of after you pass. Can you like kind of shed some light on the power that an estate plan gives you outside of the tools of actual financial products that you may purchase as part of a well-established estate strategy?
Yeah, for sure. So when most people think about estate planning, they think of a couple of things that are right here on my shirt: a trust and a will, right? That's what would normally come to mind. And a estate plan does cover, or it's comprised of everything that would be included in your net worth. So like land, real estate, cash, financial securities, possessions, collectibles, any other assets that you own or you have a controlling interest in would be included in your estate plan. And you would be able to assign, who is going to receive these assets once I do pass. Beyond that, you can also assign how these things would be distributed, right? So it's not just, oh, I want to pass this on to my son, my daughter, my wife, my cousin, whatever it may be after I pass, but it's how do I want those distributed? For a child, it's, is it at a certain age? Is it when they turn 18, plus a little bit more when they turn 25, plus a little bit more when they turn 30? What does that look like, right? So that's kind of more the financial picture. Outside of that, you get into that medical power of attorney. You get into, if I am away, or if I am incapacitated for a medical power of attorney, I'm in a coma, I'm not in a state to make decisions for myself. Can someone actually come in that has been assigned? They've been given my permission when I was in the state to make that decision for myself in order to come in and decide what's going to happen. Okay. Beyond that, it's also a personal durable power of attorney. So assigning someone to make personal or financial and business decisions for you if you are not in the correct state too. So it goes so much beyond just, what assets do I have? How do I want those distributed? What is my financial legacy going to be? But it also gets into, stuff that affects you in real life. Also think about your legacy, right? Things like what do I want to leave to charity? What gifts do I want to leave to charity to make sure that I leave a lasting legacy behind? So those are just some of the really, really important pieces of actually having an estate plan set up.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Fun fact, before I was a financial advisor, I was actually a major gift officer. So I was a fundraiser at a university, and the legacy was like the big conversation that I would have with donors. And it was insane how they could make charitable gifts in a way that they were giving away money, but still retaining wealth within their estate that their children and their children's children could benefit from until their death. And then, things would resort to the charity. So, an estate plan, I think a lot of people, to your point, they don't know how powerful and how much you can get out of it. But it's to your point, it's really dictating what your wishes are when you're no longer there to say, like, this is how I want things to happen. Can you touch a little bit on, we mentioned about medical power of attorney and assigning someone to be that medical power of attorney for you. Can you talk about kind of the relief that it also gives that person by having a plan that details your exact wishes beforehand and not something that they have to come up on their own?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a huge relief to know, if something were to happen, I have someone to make that decision for me. And it's also a relief to know that person that you assigned to be the agent is aware that they're going to be the one to step up in that situation. And I think your clients can definitely relate to this a lot in what some of them have seen recently with COVID, right? probably some clients being in a hospital, maybe they're in a state where they aren't conscious, or they aren't able to make a decision for themselves. That can happen really, really quickly, unfortunately, right? Yes. You think about something like a car accident, or, a disease that quickly develops, and you didn't see it coming, right. But in this moment, you're going to be very, very glad that you had something set up so that, on the other end, a trusted individual was able to carry out the wishes that you have discussed with them beforehand and that are included within these documents.
Absolutely. I can say personally, it's hit my family twice within the last 4 years or so, where grandparents suddenly ill and decisions having to be made. And it's family members trying to decide what's the right decision, to be made. I come from an immigrant background where families, you always rely on family to do what's best when crisis comes up. But I'm just thinking about how much different the grieving process could have been if all we had to worry about is saying our goodbyes and not like, no, let them fight on for a little bit longer. Right. Or, my wife knows, pull the plug if I can't do things for myself. I'd be very clear about that. And a lot of people may have some feelings about what they would want about themselves. But if your family doesn't know, they're going to go from their heart and oftentimes, make the emotional decision versus what would be what you wanted. But I wanted to talk about a little bit, obviously, companies called Trust&Will.
Sure.
Talk a little bit about the difference between a will and a trust, and what flexibility or power that you get within your estate from those two different entities or legal structures.
Yeah, absolutely. So we offer two different types of plans: a trust-based plan, and then we also offer a will-based plan. Within that trust-based plan, there is a last will and testament that's included. It's called a pour-over will, and those two documents, the pour-over will and the revocable living trust, kind of work hand in hand. So in this conversation, it's important to note it's not necessarily one or the other, trust or a will. It's a will or a trust and a will. Okay, so for the will-based plan, the last will and testament alone is going to cover your final wishes for dependents. So say, assigning a nomination or nominating a guardian for minor children or even for pets, going through kind of what assets you have, how you would want those to be distributed, and then also getting into, final wishes and wishes for final arrangements, things like organ donorship, wishes for memorial services, really covering anything within there. The trust is going to be a much more detailed document. That's kind of like the central hub for an entire estate plan in general. So that has provisions for how the estate should actually be managed after you pass. The biggest benefit of having a trust and a will over just having the will would be your family avoiding that painful process of having to go through probate after you pass. So we can talk about probate in just a little bit.
Let's do it.
Awesome. You want to dive right into probate?
Yeah, absolutely.
So just a couple more things regarding the trust. So obviously it's going to help your clients avoid, or your clients' families avoid the process of going through probate. There's also certain tax benefits depending on the state you're in. And then it allows you to do more specific parameters for distribution. So we kind of talked about it earlier, but in the will, you can say, I have these accounts and I have these collectibles and I want them to be distributed to these people. But that's pretty much how deep you can go. With a trust, it's I have these accounts and I want to split them up by percentages. I want this amount to go to this person. I want this amount to go to this person. And I want it to happen every 5 years. So you can get a lot more specific with the parameters for distributions within a trust, which I think is super important in real world situations where you think about, you have a minor child, you don't want them getting access to all of your assets at the age of 18. You want that to be slowly distributed out.
And I love that you brought up probate, right? Because one of the things I tell my clients, like, listen, if you don't have a proper estate plan, your estate after you pass can get tied up in probate, and probate can take up to 2 years, to have it on a court's docket. And it's really up to the court's discretion if you don't have a will in place. And even if you have a will in place, wills have been contested on their own, right? Mm-hmm. And which is few and far in between when it comes to a trust. So can you talk to us a little bit about what is probate, high level overview of what that process is and why it sucks and why a trust and will takes the suck out of that?
Yeah, definitely. So a trust and a will definitely takes the suck out of probate. A will helps the process a little bit, allows for the family to be a little bit more hands-off in that process. If you don't have any sort of documents at all, it's going to result in a really painful time for your family. So to think, 60% of American families don't have any sort of plan set up. That means 60% of American families not only are dealing with the pain of a tragic death of a loved one, but that is drawn out throughout the probate process, having to constantly be reminded and having to deal with this process with family members rather than using that time to heal. So we want after death to be a time for American families to heal rather than having to go through probate. Probate is the entire process of administering someone's estate after they die. So it is a judicial process where the will first is validated to ensure that it is a legally binding document. That's why it's incredibly important for you to get your will notarized once you receive it from an attorney or from Trust and Will. Those documents need to be notarized. The notary is essentially saying, yes, I watched this person sign it. They were of sound, they were in a sound state of mind when they did this in order to make the decisions and say, this is what I want to happen. Okay, so first it would be validating. After that, it's going to be taking inventory of the assets that you do have, paying off any debts or taxes that are still outstanding, and then distributing that remaining property to beneficiaries. That's where it can get a little bit tricky and painful. If there aren't real specific instructions on what needs to be done, that can lead to a battle over, I wanted the house, I wanted the car, I feel like I'm entitled to grandpa's baseball card collection or his bank account, right? So that's where it can get really tricky. And that's why we want to be sure that everyone does have a plan so that things can get left to who you believe that they were entitled to.
And let me interject. If you think your family's close, and they would never, your family loves each other so much. You vacation every year. You guys know each other's secrets, blah, blah, blah. And that you guys would never fight over these things. You will. It's just the nature of outstanding assets and wealth changes people. It just does. And it's just a really naive thing. Actually, in my experience, having wills and trust keeps families together because there's nothing to contest. It's there. It's there. Like grandpa, grandma, mom and dad said this. This is what they said. Even if little Johnny thought they were the favorite and, whatever, mom and dad said this. And I think it's to your point, Michael, then you can just focus on the grieving process instead of like, I'm never selling the house. They would have wanted us to stay in this. It's been in our generation for X, or, our family for X amount of generations and stuff. It gets ugly really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we understand like the probate process. And we understand that the trust gives us greater influence in how assets are not just distributed, but managed, right? Because things can stay in trust for years. And like you said, you have control over when a minor child receives funds. If you'd like to pay for college, it's not just that someone gets $500,000 life insurance proceed, it's like, all right, you need 50 grand for 4 years until college. And then you can say like, all right, we're going to give you another 50 grand when you're engaged, or buy a house. Like, people do a whole bunch of different things to really make sure wealth is being used responsibly, because it's a huge burden. Michael, a lot of my clients as travel nurses, as new travel nurses, they go from making, on average, I think probably average staff nursing salary is probably 65 a year, and they can make well north of 150 a year. For a lot of people that it's not receiving like an incremental 3 or 10% annual increase, it's a lot of new money, double, triple times their salary sometimes. And so it's a lot like winning the lottery. And so there's a lot of that same pain of like, what do I do with all this money? Mm-hmm. And I guess what I just want to say is to everyone watching and listening, that's the same type of stress people get when family leaves things behind. What do I do with what's the smart way? And if you're thinking about that, how you want your assets to be used to benefit your family, your loved ones, charities, if you're philanthropically minded, it takes that decision paralysis away when you have just like a solid trust and will for your estate plan. Are there any people, would you say, that don't need a will?
I would say definitely people under the age of 18. It's actually funny because Trust&Will has made estate planning more accessible. And we're actually having advisors now using us to have their clients' children that are in college create an estate plan to get the HIPAA authorization to release medical records, because they can't get that from the university. Also like a medical POA, personal POA. But in terms of who should not have an estate plan, it's tough to say. I think it's easier to say who should. So if you own a home and you have over 150 or 60K in assets, you should probably have a trust set up. That's our recommendation. On top of that, if you do have a spouse, probably want to have a will for sure. And then if you do have minor children, at least be able to nominate a guardian in the event that you were to pass or you weren't able to care for them anymore. So that's something that's super important. And another piece where we're focused on accessibility is giving our members the ability to create a document where they can nominate somebody to care for their minor children or their pets when they do pass.
So you mentioned about, if someone owns a home, has over 150 or 60,000 in assets, would you say that probate is only a concern for people with large estates, or just anyone in general who owns anything?
Yeah, great point. So it should be a concern for anybody that owns anything, especially when it comes to owning a home. One benefit of probate is keeping your assets private, because they're not going through a public court. You can really keep everything private that is in your estate, right? So like I said earlier, land, real estate, possessions, financial securities, cash, all that information is really kept private throughout the entire process if you go through a trust. Now, there's sort of this stereotype, I don't know where it really came from, but that estate planning is only for old rich people. And that's just simply not the case, right? That's definitely something that I thought before, learning more about estate planning.
Well, it's because the news only talks about when Prince dies without an estate plan, and it's like all the different children that he fathered.
Exactly.
So that's like where we only hear about it.
That's a great example. So yeah, in the press, Prince, the pop star, died. I think it was four or so years ago. Yeah, exactly. And he has obviously incredible net worth, more than myself, more than yours, more than any of your clients. He was a global icon, right? But while we are not all rock stars with $100 million in our estate, we can all learn something from that. Mm-hmm. Even though he had all this wealth, he didn't have anybody in his camp telling him, you need to at least have a will to assign an executor to really make sure that probate process can go, somewhat smoothly. So because of that, he wasn't able to assign an executor. If he did have minor children at the time, he wasn't able to nominate guardians for them. That also had to be decided outside of his control. So, there's definitely lessons that we can learn from, I think, how estate planning is covered in the press, but that also leads to some intimidation, right? Yeah. People say, well, that's not for me. I'm not rich. I don't have $5-10 million. Everything will sort itself out. When in reality, it's really not true. And you can make the process a whole lot easier for your loved ones.
Well, Trust and Will has definitely been making the process a whole lot easier for my clients. For the people who are watching and listening that aren't clients currently and don't have an estate plan, kind of walk us through the Trust and Will process, how easy it is to do, and how you take that grief off the table and replace it with peace of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And to do that, I'm actually going to share. Well, actually, I'm not going to share my screen real quick. I'll just go through a couple of things. So first of all, I mentioned there's a stereotype that that estate planning is only for old, rich people. Trust and Will, it's a little bit different. Our target demographic is a bit younger. So over 3/4 of our members are under 54 years old. 65% of our members have children, and over half of our members own some sort of real estate. Typically, those are homeowners. So there's a lot of people that are coming to our site that don't have significant wealth. Maybe they're in that wealth accumulation phase. It's a household, 1 or 2 married professionals. They have a kid, they have a pet. They just want to be sure that they can plan for a better future for right now. Mm-hmm. And that's really where we've been fitting in the best. We really have 3 pillars in terms of how we operate and the user experience that we want to provide. So first one is ease of use. We believe that this process can be pain-free, and it absolutely should be. The second one is leading with education. We have a ton of resources on our site where clients can come on, search by keyword, find relevant articles, and do their own research before jumping in. The last one is best-in-class member support. So we offer live support 7 days a week via live chat, by phone, or by phone appointment through a team called our Member Success Team. Not sure if you've gotten the chance to interact with them just yet, but they are absolutely incredible. I cannot say enough good things about these people professionally and personally. They are a dedicated team of individuals based in the US. They're trained by attorneys, and they are experts when it comes to estate planning laws, questions about what our software and our platform are capable of, technical questions about the site, and they're there to support every single step of the way. If you go on and look at online reviews of our services, at least half of them mention that member success team and how helpful they were throughout the process. So we want to give your clients the ability to actually take this kind of intimidating, long, drawn-out process of creating an estate plan with an attorney, simplify it, and kind of put the power in their hands, right? To go through, answer one question at a time, and really build a custom, comprehensive, state-specific estate plan in under 45 minutes.
Amazing.
Yeah. So
I know you're being generous with that 45-minute timeline. You could, in my experience, it could be done in like 20 minutes if you know where your mind is and what you want. Certainly that 45 minutes is definitely, I'm looking at you, all my clients that I have the link and haven't signed up yet. But it doesn't take that long. And it's certainly, if you don't know right away what kind of decisions you want to make, right questions are being asked to get you thinking in that right frame of mind, which is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where can we find that education center?
Yeah, so that's going to be our Learn Center on our website. That's just trustandwill.com/learn. We have articles that are updated weekly. We average probably about 2 or 3 articles per week. Our content and marketing team do an amazing job of keeping that updated. You will also have the ability to search by keyword. So say you wanted a quick recap or a visual of what we went over and the difference between a trust and a will. You could go in there, type in trust versus will, and it's going to pull up trust, will, what's the difference? What's the right plan for me?
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. And just wanted to circle back real quick around the time. I love that you said I was being generous with the 45 minutes. So for a will-based plan, it's typically 15 to 30 minutes in order to create that if you do it in one sitting. The trust-based plans, generally 30 to 45. It just depends on the speed at which you work and also the level of preparation. So Marlon, I know that you are interested in helping clients kind of prepare. We have a checklist that you can go through with them. Just make sure that they're thinking about these things before they actually dive in. But take myself, for example, right? I'm a young guy. I don't own a home yet. I don't have a spouse yet. I don't have children yet. My situation is really straightforward.
You hear that, ladies?
It probably took me 15 minutes to create a will-based plan on Trust and Will. And that was my first time. I was able to do it without, tagging into member success and asking questions without the support of an attorney, and was able to build my plan real quick that way.
So it's really, it's really has to do with how complex your life is at any given situation. Yeah.
Exactly. And the beautiful thing about it is our prices are a flat rate. So one of the things about meeting with an attorney is they charge by the hour.
Yes, they do.
They do. You go into their office and you don't know how much it's going to cost. You can get a quote, you can get an estimate of, how much it's going to be, but maybe you get tripped up and you don't know exactly what decision you want to make. You're in there for an extra 45 minutes, and that extra 45 minutes costs you an extra $400. With Trust and Will, you don't have to do it all in one sitting. If you want to take some time, you can close your laptop, think about it, come back to it, and you're still going to pay the same price as everybody else that comes to our site.
That was one of the main attractions of the why I wanted to partner with Trust and Will, because that's my business model is the same way. My clients all pay a flat subscription. It's not based on how many times they contact me and talk to me, and I honestly think that's an equitable way to do business. Any last words, Michael? Man, this was really great. Any last parting words that you want to leave us with?
Yeah, definitely. Estate planning is a cornerstone for any solid, comprehensive financial plan. I know Marlon is focused on comprehensive financial planning with anybody watching this video. When it's time for the estate planning discussion, if he's talking about Trust and Will or having you sit down and meet with an attorney, take that step. It's incredibly important. I know it's not something that you want to do right now. It's not something that you're super excited about, but I promise every single time it's going to be worth it. It's going to give you incredible peace of mind. And hopefully, if you go through Trust and Will, it won't cost you too much either.
Awesome. Well, Michael, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for spending this time sharing your knowledge and expertise. I'm looking forward to more good things coming out of Trust and Will. Amazing company to work with. Thanks, Michael.
Perfect. Thanks so much.